Today, we have the pleasure of being with Chegini Law Office, one of the top ranks law firms in York Region. Welcome, Mariam Chegini.
Thank you so much, Michelle. It's a pleasure to be here today.
The pleasure is ours. So let's dive into the information that we want to share with our audience. This is information that's not usually shared, and a lot of buyers don't know exactly what to look for. One of them is about condo sales. Last year, there was a lot of condo sales, and going into 2026, we're going to have a lot more. So what are the top things a buyer could look for in status certificate?
Firstly, it's really important that you have your status certificate reviewed by a lawyer because it's a complicated document. There's a different attachment.
Like 300 to 500 pages.
But if I wanted to tell you the top few things that you need to look at in a status certificate, you want to look at the unit-specific documents that are usually no more than 4 to 5 pages long. You want to look at...
Is that in the beginning of the status certificate?
Typically at the beginning of the status certificate. And you want to make sure that the date on it is valid. It's not a very old document because you want it to be current.
How long is it valid for?
Up to 90 days is usually the threshold that you want to make sure that it meets. The first thing you usually look at on a status certificate is what you're actually buying. You want to make sure the legal description on the status certificate matches to what is being marketed. The unit number, the parking, the locker, make sure it all adds up. And what's on the status certificate is what is also posted on MLS and is what's going to be going on your offer. Okay? And then you're going to look at the monthly common expense fee and make sure that it is also coincides with what's been posted on MLS. Sometimes on MLS, they put the year before, and if your client is not aware, it could be a difference of $40, $50 a month. You're going to look and find out if there's any utilities that are billed in addition to the common expense fee, because that's also very important for buyers that need to be aware. Sometimes water, electricity are in addition to the monthly common expense fee, and that it will mention this in the status certificate. Then you're going to look at the reserve fund balance. It's kind of hard to know how much money is enough, but what you would be able to determine is to look at the budget, look at the reserve fund balance, and make sure it's meeting the financial requirements of the condo corporation. Then you're going to look and see if there's any litigation. If there is litigation, you need to make your buyer aware of that. They need to understand some litigation will not impact all of the buyers. Slip and falls are common, but some litigation is as a result of deficiencies in the condo corporation. Those can become financial obligations that the buyer needs to be aware of. Yes. These are some of the most common things that I would recommend you look at in a status certificate and present to a buyer. And these are usually within the first few pages of the unit-specific one. Beyond that, you want to make sure the reserve fund study is done on time. Every 3 years is when they're supposed to be done. And then you're going to look at the declaration, the budget. But those are the basics of a status certificate review.
As realtors, we're always trying to avoid mistakes for our clients and definitely for ourselves as well. So in the last 15 years of you practicing law, what are some of the top mistakes that you see people make, and how can we avoid them?
Over the last 15 years, I've seen a lot of mistakes, and not all of them come up over and over again, but the ones that I would say come up most often, and especially in the last year, and partly due to the constant change in the banks and their requirements. A lot of people don't understand. So they bought they bought the house, the condo. They have the mortgage ready. Everything's done. Their down payment money is locked into a GIC, an RRSP, or some sort of investment that typically is, especially in the most recent years, because you're having a lot of first-time home buyers using all those incentives. Yes. They don't realize, these purchasers, that they have to move that money out of those locked-in accounts certain period before their purchase. So I will email them. I'll give them the amount of the funds for their closing, and I'll tell them I need this money, 48, 72 hours before your closing. They say, oh, but I didn't even cash in my RRSPs yet or GICs. Is there something you could do about it? There's absolutely nothing I can do about it. The banks all have their own requirements, their own timelines. So this is a very common mistake that comes up, and it can actually be a very big mistake, because if they don't have their funds, then there's nothing that you or I or anybody can do. And
that's very stressful for the buyer and the transaction.
So how to avoid it? Make sure you speak to your mortgage specialist, your banker, ahead of your closing. And
what's a good timing to cash out?
At least, honestly, at least 1 month before. So you're not racing to the finish. You have your funds in your account, ready to be wired to your lawyer for your closing date. And typically you should be wiring those funds to your lawyer 48 to 72 business hours before. So that's, the down payment is a big mistake that I see come up. Another mistake is buying property without the proper due diligence. What kind of due diligence can you do? Status certificate reviews, which we touched on, not having financing condition, not doing a physical inspection of the property. Because if you avoid those things, and those are the biggest.
If you waive your rights, and
you waive your rights to them, those are possibly the biggest mistakes you could make as a purchaser. Then some things are not necessarily that drastic, because the contract, the way that the OREA template contract is drafted, does provide buyers some protection, but certain things should really be addressed with an inspection of a property done by a certified inspector, and your mortgage should already be pre-approved when you're purchasing property. So those would be the most common mistakes that purchasers make, and they can be easily avoided by having your down payment funds in your account, having a home inspection done, and having your mortgage pre-approved.
Great tips. Last year, a large percentage of buyers were first-time home buyers, around 42%, which is almost half of the transactions. I believe in 2026, there's a lot of opportunities available for first-time home buyers, and we're going to see a lot of them. Based on that, in the last 15 years of you practicing law, what are some of the common surprises for first-time home buyers, and how can we avoid those surprises?
Okay, so first-time home buyers are my specialty, because I actually
love them.
I like that they have a lot of questions, that they're excited, that they're taking on home ownership. They're very proud usually. So I'm always happy to answer their questions. The most common things that come up with first-time home buyers, I would say some are unaware of exactly what they're supposed to do, what you're supposed to do, and what I'm supposed to do.
And it's a teamwork.
It's teamwork. But so one of the things that I could advise home buyers is that you need to set up your utilities. And you can do it way ahead of your closing. So once you found the property you love and you've purchased it, effective your closing date, you need to set up utilities. Some forget this, and then they'll call me and they'll say, our gas is off. We no longer have electricity, and it's because they haven't set up those
And they
accounts.
usually assume the lawyer does. And so that's a great tip.
And we don't always. It just depends on the company. Not all of them take instructions from lawyers. We usually set up your property taxes and water if it's done through the municipality. Everything else, the buyers themselves have to do. So that's one thing. A lot of first-time home buyers aren't aware that what your closing costs are, and that you have to have those funds available along with your down payment. They think that they can pay them eventually,
or with a credit card.
Or with a credit. I've had clients come to my office with a credit card to pay their land transfer tax. I wish I could accept that as a source of payment, but unfortunately it's not. You have to have all your closing costs, so your land transfer tax, your legal fees, your disbursements, all of that available in addition to your down payment to be paid to your lawyer for your closing, usually 48 to 72 business hours before. That's something they're not aware of. Also, the amount of the closing costs, sometimes they don't know, and it's very smart. It's very important that they know this, they plan for it, they budget for it, they determine whether or not they're first-time home buyers, both them and their spouses, to make sure they're entitled to those rebates, and then based on that, determine the amount of their land transfer tax. They have to know the amount of their property taxes to put that aside. So budgeting is very important for first-time home buyers. Another error that first-time home buyers make, sometimes they'll be out of the country for a closing. They just assume they can DocuSign everything. You can't always DocuSign. Some lenders don't accept DocuSign. Me as a lawyer, I want to see my clients, especially if it's a client that's never purchased a property before, that has a lot of questions. So you need to be physically here.
We need to avoid any fraudulent activity.
Yeah, exactly. I need to verify your identity, so it's better to be here for your purchases. So that's another common thing that comes up with first-time home buyers. First-time home buyers also sometimes don't know what to do after they've purchased a property. They purchase a property, and guess what? Their appliances are not working. So they don't exactly know who they're supposed to contact, what they're supposed to do, what they're responsible for. So it's good that they ask all these questions before closing. They can ask me, they can ask you, so they know how to navigate anything that comes up post-closing. Some things can be covered by title insurance. Some things can be addressed to lawyers, to realtors. So it's good for them to have all those questions answered before, and it just makes the home purchase process a lot smoother and easier for them.
And no surprises is equal to no disappointment.
Absolutely.
So find out everything ahead of time.
Yes.
And thank you so much for all
My
that
pleasure.
great info. Same as always, we want to bring you pulse of the real estate market and bring you top-notch information. So if you've enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. We would love to know what your questions are in order for us to address them next time.